There we go. Hello there. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. This is my very first live stream interview for this channel. Um, I know that some of you, well, I don't think there's anybody. Oh, there's a couple of people watching this. Uh, that's good. Today, I'm going to be having on a man by the name of Aristocratic Utensil, also known as Spoon. Uh, he's a YouTuber and social media personality who likes to make commentary on different uh, political and cultural happenings. Say hello there.
Greetings. How's everyone doing? I like the way it says monarchism and lolcows. Yeah, that's very accurate. Actually, that's basically the way that you have to do any content nowadays. You can't do well, you can do pure theory all the time, but your brain will melt. So you have to occasionally do something funny, or else you'll go insane.
Yes, and we'll have to. So, I heard that you were from South Africa. What? Tell us a bit about yourself. How did you become? How did you come to become a monarchist, especially in the 21st century?
Oh God. Well, I think it's because I was watching. Okay, well, I would say my main political journey goes all the way back to like probably late 2010s, I would say. Well, late, I say like maybe before Trump's election, really. I was actually a Bernie fan, I think, as most people who are right wing now was probably taken in by. I would say there's a lot of people who are now right leaning who was probably taken in by the fact that there is a great amount of corruption in the system, and they essentially want a benevolent aristocracy in the old kind of sense, because they look at it and think there is a lot of malevolence here, rather, and politicians should be able to do better. That's kind of the standard issue that makes you a left wing youngin, I would say. But where you go from envy driven far left to more reality power based right is what you see from then. Because I feel the people that go far left is the people that are driven by the envy, and they're the ones that basically go full commie mode. And the people that are right wing and power orientated go like, okay, how does this system actually work, and why can't we get it as described? So, make a long story short, from then it was basically once Trump got elected, because I was a Bernie fan, but once Bernie was at the race, I was basically looking at Hillary and Trump, and I wanted Trump to win because I think Hillary Clinton is an evil psychopath. I legitimately think she is like walking evil. Then the recent comments about the demographics of the United States and babies made me think like, yeah, you are legitimately just Satan's daughter. Um, so once Trump got in, I was just fairly normy in politics and went, oh, look, Trump won. Yay. Now let's just watch him govern. Because in my mind, I didn't really pay attention to the power. I just thought that, well, he won. And if he does a good job, he'll be reelected. If he doesn't, somebody else will take his place. And watching the entire media just completely go apeshit as if the sky was falling and he hadn't even done anything yet. The impeachment was firing up the Russia thing. I went, what the hell is going on? This is not a normal reaction. And I was completely blown away by the fact that the entire media was melting down, despite the fact that he was not even in office yet. Like, this was just post his election. That made me go, okay, something is horribly wrong here. And pretty much from then on, that reaction made me go, okay, something is rotten in the system. And then I was watching a lot of Lotus Eaters at the time. But what made me think something is very off with this is I felt like I was just getting information, but I wasn't really learning anything. It was like doing times tables over and over again. Like, yes, I can do 9 times 9 off the back of my head, but there needs to be a point where you go, okay, now you can start doing trigonometry and algebra just beyond the basics. And it seemed like just watching the news, you don't really get that. And so Sargon on the Lotus Eaters presented this thing called the Cathedral by a writer by the name of Mencius Mollberg that everyone now knows as Curtis Yarvin. And he basically walks you into how did you go from the collapse of, say, like the Glorious Revolution in England to the House of the Stuarts losing power to basically parliamentary rule and the monarch becoming feckless in a sense. And so you sort of see like this transfer of power away from the one into democracy, the democratic age, and then you start, reading weird books like Hans Hermann Hoppe's Democracy of the God That Fail, and you get a sense for how power really works in the system, and you start seeing democracy is just a theater show. And I would say the biggest thing that made me twitch is something that Curtis said, which is that in our regime, democracy is positive, but politics is negative, but they're synonyms. And how does that make any sense? And that makes you go like, huh, okay, that's true. And there's a lot of other axioms I think we think are true. One of them is that culture is downstream, or politics is downstream from culture. I reject that entirely and think, no, politics is downstream from power. The reason I say that is because you can look at something like transgenderism and you go, there's literally no reason why any civilization would support an ideology that calls its own citizens and prevents them from breeding and reproducing. Like, that's like objectively fucking insane. And to me, if you have something like that in your system, that tells me your people will believe literally things that will like suicide your civilization. Like, if you can believe that shit, clearly people are not rational. People will believe all kinds of weird shit. So that's the kind of thing that made me go, okay, you really need a benevolent monarch to steer the civilization, because the aristocracy in our time is just corrupt and incredibly stupid.
Yeah, I mean, the transgender thing for me was sort of the ne plus ultra of this liberal tendency towards sterility and pleasure over uh, the good of the civilization itself. I mean, we have had systems that promoted individuals that did not reproduce. Ancient monarchies did have eunuchs, and
Yeah.
you also had priestly celibacy, both in Christianity and in ancient pagan religions. But the thing about those ideas is that all of them served a social function.
Yeah.
To
They're part of a class structure.
As part of for example, in the Catholic tradition, the priest is not a father in the biological sense, but he's a father in the spiritual sense, in that he is guiding his flock towards a higher end. And the reason why he forgoes having familial ties is, or rather having children, is so that instead of being focused on his own household, he's instead focused on the good of the religious community that he's a part of and leading that without any distractions.
Yes.
Similar with eunuchs. Eunuchs allow it similar. It's something similar is happening with eunuchs, but for the transgender people, it's almost the direct opposite. They make themselves sterile or eunuchs in pursuit of their own pleasure, and everything becomes about their rights, what they want. And there's not really a sense of how they serve the broader society. Gender roles are supposed to be social in nature. They're supposed to be serving. It's You have this role in society so that other people that tells you how to benefit the whole. It's not supposed to be something where it's just about yourself.
Yeah. There's meant to be a collective function,
And
which is quite
how does
weird
that?
to me because in our society, the women are more susceptible to that. Like, women tend to be more collective, supposedly. But if you see their behavior is totally self centered, which is quite strange because men are supposed to be the more sort of like collective people, but they work through the collective via the individual. They're thinking like, I can benefit myself by or I can make something good of myself to benefit the community. Women don't do that.
Yeah, I think what has happened is a sort of that paradoxical state of affairs is caused by just I think through feminism, society has largely abandoned giving women any kind of moral duties. And in that sense, they've ceased to become women, and now they're just girls. They're and if we want to return to having women who are sane again, we need to have women who
Or
have moral
saner, rather.
duties. Saner, rather. Yeah. I mean, everybody. Here's the thing. My personal opinion is that everybody needs something higher to serve.
Yeah, that's
Obedience is
true.
a virtue. Obedience is a virtue, and when you do not have something higher than yourself to work towards, then you either go completely insane from hubris, or you fall into suicidal despair from the lack of purpose in your life.
I would almost say it's like almost boredom.
I guess it could be boredom, but I think
Just from the sense that you're just kind of like greasing the wheels and spinning the same thing over and over again. I do find it very strange that in our society, the reason for, well, in theory anyway, the reason why you have all of these opportunities for people is to really maximize the labor pool. Like in theory, you're trying to like maximize the GDP. That's like in essence what you're trying to do. Where that kind of falls flat, though, is that all of these rights that you are pushing on people doesn't actually do that. You're actually you're actually hampering the GDP growth. You're not making it better because you are making the social behaviors more acceptable via law by trying to make anti-discrimination laws, but you're not actually curbing the behavior that puts off businesses. So you're actually making it worse.
I see. And what would you say is your understanding of monarchy? How do you define it, and how does it speak to the current situation that we're in right now?
I would say one of the biggest problems that we have in our society is that we actually, if I just look how people behave when a new leader is elected, people behave as if they just elected a king. Because if you notice, when it was like Geert Wilders or Have in Argentina, or even Trump, everyone looks at the executive like there is no actual checks and balances. They behave as if like this one person is actually ruling the country and they can do whatever they want. And it's really weird to me that in a democracy, this is the person that you elected. This is the person who can like actually do some damage on behalf of the people. But then once you see like a maverick or some maverick supposedly being elected, you see all these people on television, these pundits go, well, he's going to have to work with the parliament and all this kind of shit. And my mind just goes, how are you openly saying he can't do X, Y, and Z when he has more democratic power, supposedly on paper, than any other person in fucking parliament or government or Congress, whatever? And that to me is just very, very strange. Is that supposedly this is the person running the wheels, but you have things in government that stops them from doing things that are objectively popular by popular will. I think once you can basically realize the checks and balances system is a crock of shit, because just think about it. The whole checks and balances is that someone in power has to wrangle everybody else in power. That's like the most basic concept of what checks and balances is. So all you're really relying is on some people in power to be benevolent with the power they have. Like, it seems insane to me, because if I follow this logic, if someone isn't doing what they're supposed to, the people don't have power. So you're just constantly flooding in more people into the system of government and saying, do right by this concept of checks and balances, even though nobody in it is doing that. And you're just sending fresh newbies in to correct the system. So all you're doing is you're just sending fresh newbies into entrenched bureaucrats, and the system just bloats and bloats and bloats till you get to the massive state that America has now. That you are so far away from what the original founders wanted. I feel like if you showed the original founders what it would look in the present day and age, it would just be completely bloated and a distorted version of what they originally thought of. So my thing is, eventually you are going to need an executive to just say, I am going to take the reins of power. Because the only way you're going to cull the bureaucracy is if somebody does that. Because nobody in government wants to lose their position of authority and power. That's reality. So you're going to have to, what looks like on paper today, a dictatorial sort of undertaking, really. That's going to scare people. But I always tell people, here's how I would pitch it to you. Because Americans are very terrified and scared of this concept of checks and balances being removed. But I tell them, imagine if we gave Donald Trump complete executive control, like it says in the Constitution, right? But you made the federal government smaller by like 90%. Just like as a hypothetical, how much power does he actually have? Because if you remove most of government, what can he actually do? And they seem more amenable to that idea.
Well, how would you say that a monarchy would work in, say, your original your homeland in South Africa?
Oh, in my home. Okay, well, in my homeland, I think this would be a very different case because my homeland is very racially diverse, and I think there will be. I don't see how you could institute a monarchy without a severe amount of bloodshed, because I don't think the people would take to it well, especially considering how many people are dependent on the state. Like, I think if you had a monarchy in our civilization, it would be extremely gory, and there's a lot of people that are, okay, there's no nice way to say this, but essentially functionally useless. Like half of the people in the country, and we're talking about like over 60 million people, are dependent on the state. Like I see no monarch taking power and half of the population are not working. That's like objectively insane. Like that's just a drain. So how are you going to get those people working or do something to make them productive citizens? I don't know. I don't see that ending well. But I wonder if the reason why this system persists is just because of the demographic and the fact that it is a democracy. Like, I'm wondering if you just said, like, no, the Gibbs are gone. You actually have to work now, or else something bad might happen to you and sort of, like, I don't want to say like pushing towards slavery, but sort of you are going to work or else you're not getting anything. And there's actual investment in the people that isn't just like race-based to keep people in power because the king already has power. How would that actually look? Because I don't know how the people would react to it.
Yeah, I think that there is something very wrong with a system in which everybody is dependent on basic what are basically state handouts in order to survive. Yes. It speaks to first off a breakdown in community, because before the welfare state you had mutual aid societies in which the poor were cared for by the community. And you see this even in primitive societies like those in Africa. This is what the tribe was. And there's also on a kind of biological level, it doesn't make sense for a person who works 8 hours works like 8, 10, 12 hours a day to just come back with nothing. If that was the norm, then all of our ancestors would have starved to death. So
yeah, absolutely.
So something must be going on in which, assuming that it's not just a case, like you said, where, these people are just either underworking or not working at all, and they're just reliant on the government for aid because of that. Whoever is in charge is misusing their labor. Their labor is not being forwarded towards something productive that would generate for them a fair wage. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I would say the reason why South Africa is in such a mess is because of the racial makeup and the fact that you have a hyper-productive, comparatively speaking, compared to the native population. I mean, okay, well, I don't want to say the Afrikaners are not native. They've been there for like 400 years now, or almost anyway. But you have a population that can actually run a European-style civilization because they are European, versus someone that has didn't even invent the wheel up until like 300 years ago, and it wasn't even they who invented it. Like the concept that the native population can in any way run and function a first world civilization is just not realistic. They just don't have the hardware. And so what you have is a civilization that is completely dependent on essentially the genetic, I don't want to say supremacy, but advantage of centuries of civilization versus a group of people that have no idea how to run that style of government. And so the competent people, I say competent people in government that are just slightly more functional than the people that are handed on state, they're basically using those stupid masses to stay in power at the expense of everybody else because they realize at the moment they teach these masses education and upward fiscal mobility, they will look at the people in power and go, "You're parasites. You're actually fucking the entire country. And now that I am on the ladder, you're screwing me as well. I want to get you the hell out of power." So there's no reason for the people like the ANC, for example, in South Africa, to actually educate the masses because they would never see power ever again. They're relying on the stupid and useless to actually stay in power. That's the biggest problem.
There is and there is the, like you said, the open question of whether the any amount of education can turn these stupid masses, as you put it, into doctors and lawyers. Like every liberal seems to think. Every liberal seems to think.
No, it's not. Liberalism is basically blank slate theory. Or at least that's what it's turned into. I think liberalism in a sort of English society, when it's homogenous and you just have your own kin, then yes, when everyone has the same sort of basic agreement on how the society should function and rights, then you can have sort of economic organization because you don't really have any like racial factions combating for power as you would in a multiracial democratic state. However, if it's just one kingdom and everyone were like, this person holds the reins of power, this is what we're going to do, this is how we obey, we don't give a crap about anything else, then you can sort of have a more rigid hierarchical structure, and your structures are based around that assortment in the hierarchy. But when it's just a constant scrambling for factional powers, as you do now, then the wheels seem to go fucking nowhere.
Yeah. So, yeah. Now, I would like to mention that a lot of people, the reason why a lot of modern day liberals and Americans especially don't like the idea of monarchy is because it's based on inheritance. It's based on birth. You just happen to be born in the right family rather than merit. At least, and the idea is, at the very least, a politician who works the campaign trail and is able to appeal to voters has some kind of skill that they have to demonstrate in order to do that. Whereas a monarch who inherits his position, he's just he's just given the country as his inheritance. How would you respond to an objection to monarchy like that?
Well, it's very simple. The monarch is actually trained from birth until he takes the throne to learn to rule. Whereas a politician just has to appeal to people via schmoozing. Like, it's not even to relate a monarch to a politician is just night and fucking day. And I don't think people understand how heavy a burden it is to rule a nation, especially when everyone knows that the final decision rests with you. A politician can easily just say, well, look, I've been hamstrung by this particular person in parliament. Like this, the thing that makes monarchy function is who's actually pulling the strings. Centralization of power is what guarantees your responsibility. Decentralization, but despite the fact that everyone thinks is fantastic, is actually just a massive web of bureaucracy that diffuses any responsibility. And considering the same people get elected through the same mechanism, which is just the merchant class, your politicians don't actually have any kind of training, because what makes a politician functional for the job is how they get elected. How do they get elected? By appealing to the people. The people have no fucking idea what the hell someone in government actually does. So when someone says to me the merit of a politician, my immediate response is just to raise my eyebrow and go, do you really think anyone in government has any faintest idea what the hell they're doing when it comes to caring for the people? Like, look at Jasmine Crockett. That woman is objectively a moron. Same with AOC. Same with the entire squad. Would those people in any way be in any position of authority in a sane civilization? No, because they're shit-stirring morons.
So, yeah, I so that might lead us to the next topic, which would be lolcows, because
There's
yeah,
plenty of them in our society right now. There's all over the
mhm,
shop, actually.
yeah, whether they be online or in real life. Would you say that uh, the just the modern proliferation of these lolcows is a function of democracy, as in like our democratic society is creating and lifting up these people, or were there always just crazy stupid people and the internet just allows us to see that
I
see that
Yeah, I
more.
was about to say I think it's probably social media made it worse. Just the internet in general. Are you familiar with my phrase "sex shock and stupid"?
Sex, yeah, yeah, I've watched some of your videos on that.
Yes, yeah, that's basically my sort of my phrase for how the majority are. I don't want to say ruled, but sort of entertained, because I view the masses as just basically a bunch of iron filings, and power and entertainment are essentially the magnets. And most people, especially in the attention economy that we have now, basically run on sex, shock, and stupid. And the sort of 10% that actually have a functioning brain are more like smart, subtlety, and style, which the masses don't appreciate. I mean, you can ask anybody this. If you The more complex and interesting you make any concept that actually takes work, that actually takes brain, that takes thinking prowess, and once you put in work, it will not be appreciated by the masses. The masses eat at the slop trough. Anything that requires work is just, it's kind of one of the annoying things about being a content creator, is that interesting things that make you think and are thought provoking are going to be appreciated by less people just on the virtue that it is more challenging, mentally speaking. And so, sort of, when it comes to the whole lolcow thing, I think it is mainly the sex shock and stupid, is that there is such a scrambling for power. And I think the reason why it appears now, I think a good example is James Lindsay, who is, I think he's like worse than Dev right now, actually. I think Dev before James Lindsay, and at least in our sphere, was like the peak lolcow. James Lindsay has just taken that mantle and fucking run
I
with it.
don't know. I mean, has Dev ever claimed that people he doesn't like are part of a conspiracy to summon angelic
Some
demons or
archdemons,
something?
like, yeah, no, I don't think he's gone that fucking far. I would say where they sort of differ in their lolcow status is that um, James is very obsessed with the metaphysical and the Gnostic thing, and like I can see his brain is not wired for that shit because it makes him sound like a schizo. Whereas Dev has an unholy, almost zealot-like belief in bureaucracy in a way that I just find absolutely fucking fascinating. Just because he lives in Canada, and my good God, how you can have that while living in Canada is mind shattering to me. I don't get it. Um, but I would say more the lolcow status thing is just, as one tries to get attention, how badly you want to get the attention seems to propel you towards the lolcow status. Because most people that get made fun of for lolcow is saying outrageously stupid shit. Let's be real. Like James Lindsay's lolcow status is based on him being a schizo. Dev's is the zealot-like belief in the bureaucracy. And I don't really. Okay, another person I would think is up there is Joel Berry from the Babylon Bee. Because if you want a really funny way of just seeing him get absolutely curb stomped into oblivion by reality, is he did a sit down with Dave Green on Benjamin Boyce's channel, and my good God, it's like a feminist having their reality shown to them with a bit more finesse and not so much spurging. But Dave just fucking annihilated him. I kind of want to do a video on it, actually, because I've seen some of his tweets lately, and he's a fascinating character in the sense that when it comes to debates for me, and I think I said this in a previous video, they don't really go anywhere because in a sort of machine-like mechanism, if you were arguing code, you would employ the code and see which one works, and you would sort of go from there. But in our society, when you see debates, it's not the best idea wins and they get used. It's the best person, rhetorically speaking, is who wins, and they just sort of go back and forth between how better to refine the argument. But there's nothing objectively actually gained in a sense of function for what you're arguing for. It's basically just a shit show back and forth. And so what I don't like about that kind of arguing is that it doesn't really go anywhere in terms of fact-finding mission if you're looking at debate in that kind of sense. It is just mainly a sport.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very far away from something like the Socratic dialogues, where
Yes, very.
what you're trying to do is ask questions and narrow down the underlying principles that.
Yeah, it has an MO.
Yeah, and I think what we find with a lot of these is just an inability or either an inability or an unwillingness to dig down into deeper principles.
I think it's because the underlying reality from them is really, really dark. It kind of depends on where you want to go with that. And I almost find some of them quite tedious because a friend of mine, she tends to annoy me by sending me things that she knows will piss me off, and I know she does it and sits there and giggles when I tell her, "What the hell are you sending me?" Which is why she does it repeatedly. But she sent me a clip recently of Andrew debating like a supposedly 150 IQ feminist, and oh my god, no, you're not. Like, if she has 150 IQ, then my fucking arsehole produces symphonies. But I realize why, because Andrew talks about this thing called force doctrine, which is absolutely true. It's also one of the reasons why he keeps winning, is because no one can debunk this idea, which is that all rights and liberties that you have in any society is built upon force and the reinforcement by force of arms. Right? This is every society, and any society that does not have this as the foundation is going to get clobbered by one that does. And every feminist argument ignores this principle. So Andrew can just throw it repeatedly and just go like, yeah, this is reality. And he just like basically crash test dummies every one of these morons. And so when I hear anyone arguing feminism, my immediate reaction is, do you address this? If the answer is no, then fuck off, because it's a waste of time. And so I'm at the point now where once you see this argument being hashed out or something akin to this over and over again, you really start getting bored by the fact that there is nothing beyond like this one question that you would like answered in most dialogues. And that's sort of where you tend to go into higher quality concepts and arguing over how can you push these ideas. Because once you see the same thing being done over and over again, that's when you get bored.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've seen. I mean, if you want to give an example of something like this, in the Gamergate 2 corner of the internet, just there is this constant repetition of the same ideas, the same arguments over and over and over again. And I'm friends with one of these. I'm friends with one of these people, and I asked him like, why do you do this? And he gave me two different answers that I thought were good. One was, well, I like to sneak in. The people are attracted to the spectacle, and so I like to sneak in these tidbits, like in the middle of my saying, "People, this guy got owned." I'm going to also give a intellectual comic book review or a recommendation to reading something interesting, so that people will come for this, but then they'll find this something more interesting
Almost like a smuggling bait and switch.
Yeah. I mean, and the
Subtle.
other thing he said, the reason why he repeats the same things over and over again is because not everybody watches all of his videos. So
Yeah.
and so he has to repeat the same talking points over and over in case his audience missed one of the videos that he did. And that's sort of his MO.
His justification.
That is his justification. And you know what? It seems to work well for him. It seems to net him get him an audience for his books. And but the thing is, it's just not for me. I can't really stand seeing the same thing over and over and over and over again. Because at a certain point, saying these people are dumb, they should stop being dumb, without going any deeper, just doesn't interest me. Like, why are these people stupid? Why are they wrong? What's the underlying principles of each person's stance in this? And when you dig down, you find that a lot of these people, these anti-woke people, they're actually very shallow thinkers, and
Very much, yes.
they're not much better than the leftists who are arguing, because neither side really knows what they're arguing. All they know is I feel I don't like this, and therefore I'm going to argue against it, or I don't like that, and I'm going to argue against it. And
It's the gamer argument is actually quite fascinating, and I've said this to a bunch of people, and there's very few gamers that can get this, because, and I'm going to piss off a whole bunch of gamers here. Gamers, broadly speaking, as a group, are not intelligent people. They're just consumers, and most of them are thick as shit. That's just the reality, just from my interaction with them. There's a few of them that actually have some brains, but that's not the majority of them. The ones that have brain are actually very few. Because I said to them, the world that you wish to cultivate is like a liberal, or is like libertarian on steroids. Because you're saying you want creative freedom, but creative freedom is what got you into this fucking position in the first place. Like, you are relying on the consumer to make the choices, but the consumer is not the one that is actually making the choice, because that's how you got to this bloody position in the first place. So what you actually want, just by listening to them talk, what you want is a sort of just constant stream of very heavy investment into things that might not pan out, all for your benefit. That you don't take into account the investor. Because at this point in time, investors just want a number crunch, and they don't want to take any risks. You can see it in like the constant remakes and the remasters, and the whole industry is just really fucking creatively bankrupt. That's the current state of gaming and entertainment in general. Occasionally, you'll get one sneaking in that is actually like rocking the boat in an interesting way. Like, for example, Top Gun Maverick, but even that was a sequel, but it was still very well done. But I would say that, like, now with the audience, it's the same thing over and over again. And my point is, like, you basically want a form of quality control that is just the customers, and that doesn't work. It doesn't work now, because you have conceded way too much power into like the likes of BlackRock and that kind of shit. And it's not going to work, by the way. Their model is you can't force feed people shit. That's just the reality. But the consumers are not going to make that choice, at least not through actually doing anything. That's just going to burn out naturally. I don't know where you're going to get to that point, but the idea that the consumer has any power beyond we can and cannot buy shit, that's basically it. You can inform the consumers to not do anything about it, but you're basically just slowing or accelerating the process, and that's really it.
So, yeah, do you think that there's some kind of deeper purpose to the kind of mocking of these lolcows like James Lindsay?
No.
Or no, there's
No.
nothing. It's
well, it's like the peasants mocking the aristocracy. They're not going to overtake the aristocracy. A different elite will move in. That's that's iron law of oligarchy. The peasants can just rabble. It's like that bit in South Park where they just go to the mayor and just rabble. It's basically that. None of them are going to replace the mayor. Somebody else has to. But it's basically just that. It's basically just a whole lot of whinging and complaining. Like, the whole point of the gamers thing is, I want people to hear my opinion so I can get money. They're basically no one is saying, if you listen to gamers, they don't say anything interesting. They don't say anything new. It's just appealing to the same crowd by giving them the same dopamine fucking hamster wheel over and over and over again. There's nothing interesting in the gaming sphere. That's the reality. I've never listened to any gamers, a whole bunch of them, and go, you are saying something interesting, you are saying something different. No, you're all saying the same fucking thing. You basically, if you watch one gaming content creator, you've seen all of them.
Yeah, I mean, they even copy each other too, and
yes, exactly.
Asmongold reacts to all these different smaller videos, who basically repeat his talking points back to him, and he just claps and says, "Yeah, I totally agree, guys. What do you think?"
Yeah, because that's what they're looking for. They're not looking for someone who can, because the people that comment, they're just looking for someone to reaffirm what they already believe. And that's what the people who want to watch gaming content are actually for. Because gamers, okay, tend to be very isolated, hermit like people. And I know this because I was one of them for a very, very long time. And so you're just looking for someone that reaffirms your opinion for a sense of community. I'm hoping on some level they're aware that as consumers they can't actually do anything. But like every hobby group, they want other people who think like them, so they feel a sense of community. Because gaming is not, people want to be a part of a community. We're social people, and the gamers just want that feeling of community, but they want it online because they can't do it in person. Like, I remember back in the day where like you would all get together and play games, but now that's mainly digital. People, play on WoW or COD or whatever. I remember my teenage years was basically spent with people that are like at least 10 years older than me. And we would all get together and shoot the shit and just talk shite and PvP. Like, and that was like my childhood. My teenage years was basically spent doing that until like an ungodly hour in the morning. I have no regret on that by it because it was fucking funny. The main reason I played the games was it amused me, and to hear like people of different English accents get drunk and swear was really amusing to me. I mean, I would still do it now. If I had some buddies to play WoW with and we'd all shoot the shit and say funny shit, I would definitely do it again because it's funny and it does provide a sense of community. But now that sense of community is basically shit talking a bunch of pink head spastics who just say this is what a woman should look like, and it's obviously retarded, and it's very basic bitch social signaling, really. At least in my opinion, anyway. I imagine other people might find that kind of offensive, but I fail to give a fuck.
So, what do you think is the purpose of your commentary on these people, like besides money, besides making money or getting clicks off of them?
Well, okay, well, it's sense in mine. I don't do it very often. I can occasionally dip my toe in, and occasionally I will say some wild shit that pisses them off. Like, okay, so the one that got me into a lot of trouble recently, and this is something that I could not wrap my head around, was I can't remember the guy's name now. Dread Roberts. He made a comment on, I think it was at like Pirate PC Twitter handle now. I can't remember, something like that. And it was basically just some like gotcha chick dancing and her ass was showing. And he said, like, do gamers want this? Is this what gamers want? Something like that. And there was a lot of people agreeing, and he just went, no, because this isn't really gaming. This is just like basically very basic bitch lewd kind of attention grabbing kind of shit. There's no art here. And I looked at it and went like, yeah, I agree with that. That's true. To give you someone who actually cares about the artistic medium, then very lowbrow sex appeal is just kind of meh. I thought that was a fairly innocuous take, but so many people lost their fucking minds. And then Melanie Mack weighed in on that and just went, this doesn't really appeal to me as a gamer either. And that to me is just a consumer expressing an opinion. I don't know why people lose their shit over it. But
I mean, I did a video on that earlier this year. Apparently, they seem to equate conservative Christians criticism as being equivalent to censorship or calls for censorship.
yeah, and I don't understand that at all.
Well, I mean, if I had to guess, it's like someone. Let's take Smash JT, who was kind of on the opposite side of these Dread Roberts types.
Yes.
If you go to his website, and the thing is, the guy has long been like, he's had a lot of business ventures that have gone very badly over for him. But if you go to his website, he says, the purpose of my website, the purpose of what I do is to tell people what to buy and shape the culture in a direction I think is positive. I'm paraphrasing here, but that is what he says on his channel. That I'm trying to shape the culture in a way that I think is good. And if you believe that culture is downstream, politics is downstream from culture, like all liberals do, like all of these people do, then yeah, you're going to believe that your conservative Christians criticizing games for not being artful or being too lewd, that you would think that that's the beginning of like a fascist theocratic takeover.
Yeah.
Which is kind of which if you when you put it like that, it sounds like
retarded.
Reductio ad I was going to say reductio ad absurdum, but that's kind of
that's more the basic version, yeah. But that is also apparently, yeah. No, but I agree with that, because one thing that I just thought was absolutely fucking absurd was at one point I began to realize that as well, because I don't bullshit my audience, and I think a lot of people in the gaming sphere just tell people what they want to hear because that's the way they get clicks and likes, and they don't actually care about games. They're just in it for the money. That's my honest opinion. And so my perspective on it is just these people that you all revere, like, you know, Melanie and Arch and, you know, V and all these people, Hypnotic. None of these people have any fucking influence in gaming as far as the entertainment sphere is concerned. They're just fucking YouTubers with an opinion. No one who makes any fucking games are listening to what any of these people are saying and making games based on what Melanie Mac or Arch Warhammer thinks on fucking anything. And anyone who thinks so is an idiot. That's my perspective, because you can fucking see it in real time. And so if you tell these people who believe that they do actually have opinions or that they do have validity, and people actually listen to these YouTubers and make games off them, which is fucking absurd, I'm basically critiquing your worldview and your identity. And so you're going to get immediately hostile and aggressive at you. And I don't mean it in that kind of way, but that's how they take it. And it took me a while to realize that is how these people see my critique. And I'm not even trying to do that. Like, I'm just saying that this is the reality of the situation. And I'm basically attacking your cult identity in this particular social dynamic. And so there's a couple of people. I remember like the first couple of videos that I made on that, because I think I made like 4, just like constantly doubling down, because I went like, no, you people are fucking morons. I'm not going to back down on that. You're stupid. And I got some people messaging me on Twitter going, why is this like frame breaking to some of your audience? Like, of all the things we've ever seen you do, this one seemed to make them really stupid. And at the time I went, I have no fucking idea. I don't know why people are hearing this. It was like a very feminine reaction. It took me a while to realize that, oh, I'm actually attacking their identity in this really weird way that I'm not even trying to do. And it made me realize that, yeah, I'm actually attacking something like a fundamental core of their being. And I'm just critiquing their plan of action, which makes no fucking sense in my mind, because it isn't real, but to them it is. And trying to tell people like, hey, look, what you believe is bullshit. Yeah, it turns out they don't take to that very well. And so it made me go like, okay, yeah, I can't talk to you people about games because you live in a fantasy. And I'm basically popping it, and that's the reason you're so fucking mad at me.
If you really want to see like a interaction in which the one of these liberal types interacts with a conservative in the same sphere, there's a great live stream interaction between these two guys, John De La Rose and Smash JT. They're both lolcows in their own way, but John kind of got the better of Smash in that debate, because Smash's entire argument, it was essentially that John was racist and anti-Semitic, and he should be ashamed of that. And John just laughed out loud, and then they had a Native American on the stream who was one of John's co-hosts, and John said, John said to his co-host, "You really scalped his argument there." and then there was the point where John actually says, "I just want to make video games. I just want to create a culture that is safe and secure for my white children." And then when Smash was like, why did you say that white? And he's like, John's like, oh, well, it's to piss you off.
Did he not get that was the whole purpose?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think Smash was genuinely outraged by the fact that he came on there with these, I don't know, just left-wing social shaming tools, and John just said, you know what, I don't care I really don't care. All I care about is making the culture better through spreading my art and spreading all of our art and critiquing these social justice warriors in gaming and stuff. And
Yeah,
it's and,
they have no intention of doing that actually.
and because, like you said, it's something they're just giving. I guess they're giving their audience what they want to hear. They're just there for the I don't know the entertainment factor or whatnot. And I think there's nothing more substantial to them. Speaking of, uh,
There actually is, but in a sort of indirect way. I can sort of see
mhm,
what they're. I would say, okay, here's a good. Okay, here's me like steel manning them. Is that you would hope the developers see who the consumers are listening to. And if they're constantly looking at these people that are growing bigger and bigger, bigger constantly, then in theory, you should hope the developers look at people like Smash JT or like, Nerdrotic or Critical Drinker, people that are massively popular and go, do you see the way that the same audience that likes your products also like these reviewers? Yeah, listen to them, you dumbasses. That's like the best case scenario of what you want. The problem of it is, if that was the case that they would do anything anyway, then you wouldn't need to fucking exist because we didn't need these kind of reviewers 20 years ago to make good games. So clearly, the model that they're trying to reinvent is not what the people in power are actually doing. Like, return on investment is not the purpose. So if you're trying to appeal with a fiscal return on investment, the reviewers are not actually doing jack shit.
I see. So to transition to the final topic, the more some of the more controversial takes, which apparently in to you, your takes on race and sex were less controversial than what your takes on gamers.
Yeah, which is really says something, actually. I think it's because gamers are in a particular group and they have their own kind of way that they see the world, mainly because I want thing, give me thing and fuck off. That's very simple. But it is a niche in this sort of worldview. Whereas the realities of race and sex is just like, well, yeah, obviously. And also, I think when the entire world is trying to persecute you by like saying the problem is whiteness, and you happen to be white, and someone just says, "No, actually, I am white and I'm proud." Fuck you. That kind of goes like, "Whoa, we don't really hear that very often," and so that kind of tends to resonate. And I am unapologetically pro-European, and I don't fucking care because I can just look at my civilization and go, "What has yours done? If I fucked off, you would be taken over by China or the Middle East would enslave you." Welcome to reality. Eat a dick.
Oh, okay. So, what would you say is your? So you would say that um, the there are plenty of people who. How should I put this? So you believe race for you is just like the biology obviously, but it's also something to do with it also has to do with the culture and the civilization that people with that biology reproduces over a broad scale. Would you say that that is the your understanding of things?
Yeah, I would say that I don't think anyone would dispute that race and culture are linked. I mean, I think that if I just look at it, like anyone that says otherwise, I think it's just like deluding themselves. Especially because we have like the transatlantic trade and sort of boats. I think is where you really start mixing different races and cultures, like on a global scale. I think that's when it starts to like really mix. But like, I mean, for example, like if I take a look at say the American founding fathers and who they took as slaves to bring to the New World, the concept that those people would be equal to European aristocracy that made the United States government is completely absurd. And I think like anyone who says they are equal is insane. Like you don't live in the real world.
Hmm. I mean, generally speaking, when someone like the founding father, when the people like the founding fathers said all men are created equal, I actually have been
Spiritually.
doing, yes, they, yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
what that mean, and I've been researching what that means, the intellectual origins of that. and the moral implications. And they meant something on the long lines of we all have equal rights, in that, we as Americans are equal to you as, because they were writing this to the British government. We as Americans have equal rights to you as the British. So we have the right, just as you have the right to, say, overthrow your government and install one of your own, as you did during the Glorious Revolution, so called. We too have the right to overthrow your rule and replace it with something of ours. But the American founders did not see Africans as being their intellectual equals. Now, how much they did varied. Some of them would have, like, if you look at um, Thomas Jefferson's work. He At one point in the same book, he says that Africans deserve to be slaves because they lack reason, and just look at how their civilization doesn't produce any great poets. And then on the next page he'll say something like, well, slavery is something that is a moral abomination. The fact that and God will punish us for having enslaved these Africans. So there was clearly something at work here that, some might say is like a moral contradiction
Yeah.
in his thinking, and I would agree with that to some extent. I think though it's undeniable that um, older societies, while they would have been against mistreating people of different races or treating them as if they didn't have rights, they would not have made the mistake of saying that therefore every race will produce equal outcomes in when they exercise their sovereignty in their own spaces.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree with that. I do think it's very difficult for modern people to square this idea, because I've noticed that one thing modern people tend to do that drives me absolutely insane is they seem to think that your ancestors have the same moral code as you, which to me is fucking batshit insane. Basically, if I will listen to anyone critique the past or talk about moral values, and if you think your ancestors have the same values as you, like I don't think you have a functional brain. I will almost like
Yeah,
flat out dismiss you as a person to be taken seriously.
I've met kids who thought that the founding fathers had iPhones because they have iPhones and are shocked to find out otherwise. These being middle schoolers, like the people aren't taught about the past. That's why you get this problem.
I don't even know what to say to that.
Well,
It's like a
you just
level
have
of like insane that I just go like, what?
well, well. I mean, you have to keep in mind, if people aren't taught what life was like for the average person back in the day, how are they supposed to know?
Yeah, I suppose. But
It's
it's
really,
just it's more the kids just like seeing the state of education these days is like fucking insane. Um, this okay, so
hmm,
here's okay. I can't read this whole quote because it's like heavy n bombs, but there's one problem here. They said the problem is they can mimic you, they can speak. This is what lends itself to confusion. Imagine a dog could speak English and could mimic you, but still had the quality experience of a dog. It would be the marker of a virtue signaling moron to believe the dog is just like you and that it deserves rights and respect equal to you. Yet the leftists gravitate to that notion because they themselves are morons. That is a pretty accurate description of how we see equality these days, is through
well,
mimicry.
yeah. I mean, one of the things though that we see, right? I I do not take an essentialist view of race. I do believe that it's biological in a certain sense, but if you look at these different races, they did have at some point they are able to develop language and culture and traditions without the help of Europeans. What they
Yes.
don't develop is what they don't, and so and on that grounds, I would say that they have the same essence as Europeans. What they don't have is, they have intelligence, but they don't have the same intellectual vigor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they're basically products of the environment.
And the and I think what has happened in modern times is there's not really a strong distinction there. They a lot of liberals seem to act like if Black people are not 100% equal in their nature, and by nature I don't mean just human nature, I mean just all of their inborn traits. If they're not absolutely equal in all of their inborn traits, then that would justify doing whatever you want to them, as if they were enslaving them, destroying them, and whatever. And I don't think that
it's actually quite insidious if you put it that way.
it is insidious, and I think that,
Yes.
and I think what brought me to that was this interview that what's his face, Jared Taylor, had with this NBC reporter, who basically said something like that if Black people are not, like, if they don't have the same amount of smarts, then why isn't it wrong to just kill? Is it just okay? Isn't it just okay to kill as many of them as you want for no reason? And it's like, and Jared Taylor was just taken aback, like, what are you even talking about? But she doesn't really justify it. But I think what has happened is, there's not really that kind of distinction, that kind of spiritual equality, as you put it, understood. And so all that's left is the material equality. And that becomes the basis of their people's moral standing, as so to speak. And when you make it,
I would say this is where I think where that mentality comes from is that the liberal, okay, they don't want to say this, but this is how they actually think if you were to just map them out. The people, okay, take for someone like myself who favors, say, segregation as a hypothetical. The reason why you do that is because you recognize that there's differences between the people. And the reality is, in every hierarchy, every civilization, there's a way of doing things that keeps the cohesion of that hierarchy in working order. And it's top down. Every hierarchy is like this. That's how just human beings work. That's how all mammals work. And so if you have a certain amount of people that are stuck in the bottom of the hierarchy and they can't move the same way that everybody else does, that hierarchy is going to be a problem. And so you have two choices. You can either elevate them through some way, or if they don't have the brains, you need to basically move them out of your society and in their own, and they can have their own hierarchy. That's the best case scenario. You can sort of see where I'm going with this. And the people who favor that is they look at that and go, you are not capable of being pressed into the mold that the rest of our societies that we do naturally. Like if we need to basically contort you into a form that is compatible with what our civilization is, that is imposing a way on you that you are not capable of, and we consider that objectively bad. And so moving them into a place where they can be more naturally who they are, we actually consider that a benefit. But the liberal doesn't see it that way because you're basically seeing them as, well, you're ostracizing them from our society. Like, yes, we are, because they're not like us. You wish to impose upon them to make them more like you, and we don't.
That is something. I think when you put it that way, it makes sense. Why? Because when you look at it, why that makes sense of your assertion earlier that having nations and separation is just segregation on a national scale.
Yeah, because it is.
Well, the issue is the way I often, and at least this is how I was taught about American segregation. American segregation had the quality of making this class, you're integrating this class into the whole as a kind of underclass, a kind of a caste. So it doesn't matter your level of intellect as an individual, if you are, or your competence as an individual, if you are part of this race, even if it's just even if slightly, then you are not then you are stuck at this lower class. And the idea of separate but equal did not work because they weren't really separate in any real way. They were still part of the society, but they were the underclass of that society, and
Yeah.
they were treated as such in the popular culture and among the hoi polloi. And this is, and I think, you know, it's it's very clear that what happened during the civil rights era was that you had liberals saying, well, we're going to make you equal by removing all of these barriers and getting you out of this second class citizen status. And
Yes.
you know, and a lot of people, they don't seem to remember this. They seem to think that the point of the civil rights movement, was to have civil rights, when really the point of civil rights movement was to make everyone equal on an economic level. The idea
Yeah.
was that if you could just give these people opportunity, they will produce equal outcomes. But the thing is,
Which is ridiculous.
yeah, Thomas Sowell actually pointed out that there has never been a multi-ethnic society in which two different races have had equal outcomes on average.
Yeah, of course not.
It's
Because
it's
it's
just
ridiculous.
it's never happened before. And so why are we? And so in a sense, it's the civil rights movement failed because it was had this impossible task, set out to do this impossible task, and now
You can't even
you
do that
have
with the same ethnicities on the same continent.
and now we have and now you have a bunch of people, an entire population of people, where they were promised economic equality, which is impossible, and they feel shortchanged. And this is where you get critical race theory and all of this as explanations of why this equality didn't come about.
Yeah. And nobody wants to give the honest answer, which says, no, there's genetic differences and you can't just mold people through law.
Yeah,
You can basically you can order civilization, roughly speaking, through curbing behaviors through the law, but you can't make people smarter and stupider just through state intervention. That's absurd because you're talking about genetics, and genetics are permanent.
yeah. So my argument against segregation, at least in the American context, what is similar to my argument against the civil rights, which is that, in a certain sense, the way you integrate these people into your society it can't be through just denying them their
Mass formation,
dignity.
yeah.
Like it's you can't just mold a completely different people into your into like your underclass, nor can you just mold them into being identical to you using the power of the law.
Yeah, no, of course not. That's insane. Like
Yeah.
I did a video on this recently because I read
Mm.
an excerpt of James Lindsay's book where he wrote this thing. See if I can maybe pull it up here. Just give me a second because I used it in one of my videos and I just laughed at it because I just thought it was completely fucking absurd. He's just give me a second. Here it is. He just said, when the liberal left explicitly challenged all of this and advocated the view that people should not be evaluated by their race, sex, or sexuality, it held a convincing moral high ground over right-wing elements who argued that they should. And he ends it here by saying, those socially or religiously conservative elements who still believe that women, black people, or gay people should be restricted to certain roles in life or denied equal rights became recognized as holding an extremist far-right position and could expect reputational damages in a liberal society. Now, the problem with this is that you're just giving people legal rights, anti-discrimination. But the problem is no one discriminates based on categories. They discriminate based on behavior. So you can say you may not discriminate against black people, but you don't discriminate against black people because they're black. You discriminate based on behavior. So you can say you may not discriminate against the black people, but what you were discriminating against was the behavior. And considering the law does not account for the behavior, the law doesn't actually change shit. You still have the exact same discrimination practices because the law didn't change what was being discriminated against in the first place.
Mm, right, because what was happening was the behavior was associated with the group, and it's the behavior that
Yes.
the target. It's the behavior that was the target, and since the law here, the thing is, like, when we talk about legality, the law doesn't deal with individuals. It deals with individuals
Yes. It
as
deals with
members
groups.
of collectives. It deals with
Yes.
groups, exactly, and that it's very tough, I think, because you do see you do see a lot of variations within these groups, but at the same time, these groups do exercise not just like on the level of genetics, but also on the level of their culture, a force upon the individual members that that will shape their behavior in a certain direction, and
Yeah.
and it's very difficult to deal with that without um, going on the one hand, like James Lindsay says, "Oh, you're just you're not dealing with these individual cases," but but if we were going in the opposite extreme, the James Lindsay way, we like you said, we wouldn't actually be dealing with the underlying problem.
No. And
It's yeah,
that's his fatal mistake, is that he's not actually addressing the problem. Which is probably why it hasn't gone anywhere. Because I feel like I was listening to this this short excerpt. It was about 11 minutes long. I'm actually going to video on it after this. And this person was talking about black fatigue. And I was so annoyed by the woman because I realized one of the reasons why I dislike the grifting culture from black people, like the victimhood race crap, is not that I expect a victimhood mentality, but it's more the fact that they don't fucking say anything new. It's really boring and it's very vague because the one woman just said, like, we've only been a couple of decades away from the things that have been oppressing us. We're not where we're supposed to be. And I almost like yelled at my screen, just like, what the fuck does that even mean? You're not telling me anything. Where you're supposed to be? What the fuck is the metric for that? And your elevation. You've now been lifted from oppression. Okay, now what the fuck does that look like? What is that? It's just it means nothing. And
well, we
that
were
kind of crap annoys the crap out of me.
yeah. I mean, these people were given an idea that once you lift these people out of oppression, then they'll just be economically equal, and
Yeah,
they
which is
don't,
not true.
which is not true, exactly. And everything everything about the about what they're doing, all this rhetoric is meant to say, well, we haven't achieved equality yet because we don't see, for example, I don't know, my paycheck isn't the same as some white guy's paycheck, and therefore I'm not equal yet. On a very basic level, that is what equality means to these people. That I'm not earning the money that I'm supposed to be earning in my mind, and like you're like it's kind of like it's very difficult, and that kind of thing can be very subjective. And the only truth that you can glean out of that, you know, if you were to steelman their position, is to say that in our society, you do see economic problems, and you do see people, for example, not being able to get an affordable home near a job, near the job that they work at. I think there was. Did you see that Nathan Koffness versus Dave Green debate yesterday?
I was talking to Dave about it just before we came on because apparently Dave was annoyed a little bit.
that is like that is
A very
I was
mild way of
annoyed.
putting it.
That's a mild way of putting it. That's the best way to put it.
Was
Dave
it was
Dave
Dave like amped as shit? I'm gonna watch it later, by the way. So I
I'm not
asked
quite
Dave like, how do you feel about it? And he's just I won't say because he said it to me in DMs, but from the responses I saw on Twitter, I imagine he was slightly irritated, a little bit.
Oh yeah, he got progressively more annoyed by this guy the longer he
I wonder
talked to him.
why.
It just
Because
well,
I've
I
heard
mean,
Dave put it this way. If you watch the Joel debate that he had with on Benjamin Boyce's channel, um, Dave is very good at just knocking away the veneer of care and like, what are you actually saying? And let's discuss the reality of civilizations. And in our timeline, discussing realities are very, very off-putting and taboo to people who wish to maintain the status quo. And Dave just has no fucking patience for that shit. Like Dave will just go for the jugular. It's one of the reasons I like Dave, is Dave does not fuck around. He's very subtle about it, but once he gets like a role of like, this is the point I'm trying to drive you to, and if you don't come with me, I'll basically like drag you kicking and screaming.
I think it's just because, I mean, I don't. This was just my take on the debate. I just think that Nathan had a party line that he was
Yes, that's
supporting,
very much the case.
and and unlike someone like Joel Berry, who might legitimately believe in it, even though he doesn't have a clue how to defend it, this guy knows that his worldview was untenable, and he complained about Dave mischaracterizing his position. Like Dave would say something, and this guy would go, "Well, I'm not doing that, and therefore you're wrong."
Is it like the Murray and Smith debate?
Uh, I don't know about the Murray and Smith debate, but there was one part where Dave pointed out the reality that Zoomers or young people can't get jobs, and this guy cited the consensus of economists is saying that protectionism is bad, and therefore Donald Trump's tariffs don't work. And he said, and
How did he relate
Dave,
those two together?
I don't know. It's just well, I know, I remember now. Dave was making the case that free trade policies implemented have made us poorer now in some ways than we were in the 90s. And he was pointing to home ownership. And and this guy, he was saying, well, actually, if you look at the GDP per capita, everybody's richer. And when Dave tried to explain to him, no, the jobs are concentrated in one. The prices of homes are going down, but it's in places like Detroit, which are just
Shitholes.
wastelands, shitholes, and then the places where the jobs and the wealth are accumulating are in places like New York and LA. You can't buy a house in Detroit and then work it out of New Jersey. That's a 4-hour commute. And this guy just, I don't know. He either just didn't get it or he was pretending not to get it.
Right.
That
Okay,
that and that
I actually just read Dave's DM right now, and apparently someone said to me it was too aggressive. Okay, like when Dave's like, I've seen Dave when he's like pushed a little bit, so I'm curious as to what does too aggressive look like when somebody else says it. Now I'm very curious now. I'm probably gonna watch it
was
after this.
to be fair, the other guy was kind of mild mannered, nerdy looking guy.
Yeah, I know. I've actually done a video on him before on my Rumble channel because he actually said something sensible.
Oh yeah, he is like an HBD guy who thinks that, but he thinks the solution to the problem of academia is if we just get enough smart Zoomers who are
Yeah, a better
who
class of
are
experts. Yeah,
yeah, and that's
yeah.
his entire position. And Dave, I think that their actual positions aren't that far apart, but the thing is, what Dave was
How'd they get
attacking,
there?
how to get there was very different. And what Dave was attacking
Yeah,
specifically was this idea that liars, it's liars are worse than non-experts. Like a expert is worse than a non-expert, and among other things, there were a lot of different points that Dave was attacking. It was a
say
good
that again.
debate.
A liar is worse than a non-expert.
Yeah, that's
Hmm.
a lying expert Nathan Kaufness couldn't actually say flat out whether or not a lying expert is better or worse than a non-expert who sometimes lies and sometimes makes mistakes but is always truthful. And that was and Dave was trying to explain why it's a bad idea to why it's a bad idea for your epistemology if you trust people who you think are the experts, just even though they're lying to you.
Do you know they're lying, or?
Yeah, it's
well, then you're just an idiot. If you know they're lying, you still believe them. That just makes you a moron.
And Nathan Kaufness is like, well, if you they're lying about COVID, but they're not lying about about what causes heart disease. So therefore, and Dave had to explain, no, it's about politics. These people will choose their political positions over the truth, and the less. I'll leave it to you to react to that video. It was genuinely infuriating for me to watch it. I did at one point. I just said, you know what, I give up. I think this guy is just being dishonest. That, or he's just very thick.
I get the impression he's probably just dishonest, because from what he said before, I don't think he's actually stupid. I had an epiphany a while ago, and it made me look at some of my previous takes very differently.
Oh,
and it's making my propaganda views quite different now. And it was based on that video that I was watching on the black fatigue thing. Because okay, so there were 5 people on the panel. There was this one woman who was unbelievably fucking thick as shit. It's like an Al Sharpton clone in the middle, a Nigerian woman, a white conservative lady, and I was like a Hollywood center right dude who the three non-liberal people esque, so to speak. They just basically said black fatigue is behavior focused and basically just common sense. The black woman on the far right hand side was just a dopey moron who said things that make no fucking sense. Like, for example, she said she's also first generation, apparently referring to the Nigerian woman because she's the only one who mentioned anything about generations, despite the fact that she said that she was born in America to Nigerian parents, which would make her second generation. So I'm also first generation makes no fucking sense. Whilst also saying her grandmother fought for the civil rights era. I'm like, how the fuck are you first generation, but your grandmother fought in the civil rights era? That makes no fucking sense. That's just stupid as hell. But the guy in the middle, he just did the Al Sharpton shuck and dive thing, just not blaming politics or anything, and did the cliched thing of, just normal victimhood talking points, the kind of shit that basically personifies black fatigue. And I just sat there looking at myself going, how are you so stupid that you basically personify black fatigue whilst the discussion is about black fatigue? Like, I couldn't wrap my head around why you so dumb that you would do this. It made no fucking sense to me. And then I realized, hold on a minute. When I do pattern recognition, or where anyone does pattern recognition, what we do is we ascribe a value to the conclusion of that pattern based on our values. And it registered to me that what this guy was doing, he is also doing the same thing. But somebody else who is more amenable to his shtick sees what he does repeatedly and sees consistency in his message. The pattern recognition is neutral. The end conclusion is based on the values. So it made me realize that maybe people aren't actually all that stupid. Just what they're recognizing in the pattern is based completely on bad programming. And it made me look at society and go, who's actually programming, and can we make people smarter just by like tweaking who's doing the programming? I sent this to Aiden, and Aiden just went, "No, they're just fucking idiots. Don't think more of it." Like, okay, thanks. I was trying to steelman them and maybe be nicer to civilization, but no. For once, Aiden was the asshole and just went like, "No, these people are retards. Don't fucking bother." So that was like, huh? Maybe I'm looking at civilization completely wrong, and I just need to get better at propaganda. That was my perspective. So I don't know what to make of that. Actually,
that's something. I mean, you're right in that. I think that there are. How should I put this? I'm someone who does ethics on this channel a lot. It's in the name, applied virtue. It's applied virtue ethics, and part of virtue ethics is an understanding that in order to recognize moral wrongs, you have to be trained to do it. It's not something that is natural.
Innate, yeah.
It's not something innate. And if you grow up in a community where there are certain social norms that that are promulgated that you see as being perfectly normal, then you're not going to recognize them as being problematic or more immoral. Like, for example, if you live in a community where, for example, you sees nothing wrong with littering, then of course you're going to think, oh, there's nothing wrong with this behavior. I'm just going to keep doing it because that's how everybody else is doing it. And when you move out of that community into other communities which find that behavior reprehensible, you're going to it's kind of a cultural shock, because now you see this view that, oh, you should pick up after yourself, and rather than just throwing the litter on the ground. You see that as foreign, being oppressive. It's foreign, it's oppressive. And the stupidity comes in when you just can't see that there are other cultures. It's kind of like the person who thinks that everybody, all of their ancestors had the same moral views as you. These people think that all cultures have the same moral views.
The same, yeah, which is fucking retarded.
And when they are confronted with that fact, their brain does a 404 error does not compute type of deal, and then someone like Al Sharpton comes in and says, well, you know what this is? This is the white man oppressing you, and that's the reason why you feel uncomfortable. That's the reason why that feeling. That's you're experiencing racism, and then they go, oh yeah, that makes sense. This is oppression.
I have noticed I have noticed a lot of behaviors that these people call oppression, we just call standards.
That is
like
true.
So many things I've seen people just go, oh, these are oppressors. Like, no, bitch, you're just a low IQ moron, and you can't understand that this is what our society does as normal because you're too stupid to understand standards. You're not being oppressed, you just suck. Bluntly just going to say it that way, because I'm kind of sick of the stupidity from a lot of these people. It makes me go like, if you can't recognize that other people aren't like you, then maybe you're too stupid to be in our civilization. Like, maybe you literally don't have the brain capacity to understand that people are not like you.
So what would you say, so to close up, because we've been going for an hour and a half, what do you think people most misunderstand about you as someone who does this kind of YouTube and social media commentary?
Oh God, that's an interesting question. I've never been asked that. Things that they don't understand about me. I am always right, and I don't care what you have to say. It's very aggressive. I tend to think before, and I have a group of people that I run the shit by, who I consider to be much smarter than I am, and so if you give me an argument that is bullshit or that doesn't make me think, like, my ceiling and patience is very thin. Like I will look at you very quickly, and within like 10 seconds, I will think you are someone that I can talk to, or you're interesting, or I will just flat out reject you and throw you in the remainder bin, never to be seen ever again. I don't have a lot of patience for stupid people because I actually have like much smarter people around me. So like your window of impressing me is fucking small as hell. I know that sounds
Right.
really conceited, but I don't care. There's more than enough stupid people. So if you really want to stand out, then fucking hell, there's not a lot of opportunity for that shit.
I mean, there are plenty of ways
I'd
to
rather
be
be fucking honest
uniquely
about it.
stupid. There are plenty of
Oh
ways to
yeah,
be
there's plenty
unique.
of that. There's fucking tons of ways of that shit. We're not shortage of that shit. Somebody
Oh
asked me
yeah.
why am I Spoon? Okay, I can answer that one really quickly. Several years ago when I was really big into Soundgarden, still am, but when I first started out, I listened to the song Spoon Man a lot, and that sort of became like my handle because when I shaved my head, I looked like the Spoon Man, who the song is named after. And then my friend said, "Hey, now you look like the Spoon Man," and then I just became Spoon, and then Spoon Man. That just went to Spoon after a while. And when I was on the Lotus Eaters, that was my handle. And so someone drew me an avatar of the spoon with the sort of like maybe 1800s, early 1900s kind of attire because I apparently sound quite snobby and aristocratic. And so that just became my handle. And as far as like where the name Aristocratic Utensil came from, it's because when you look up spoon on YouTube, it's very difficult to find that as far as the channel name goes because spoon is just it's a normal word. And so the Aristocratic Utensil was basically just to make me stand out on the search engine. Like that's all it really was. It worked
Yeah,
though.
and it certainly did. Well,
Yeah.
so what's next for you? Are there any new projects, writings that we should be looking out
Um.
for?
Yeah. So this is actually the first time in a while because I recently moved. So I have a whole bunch of content now. There's like 6 or 7 videos right now that I want to do, and they're all
Mm.
fairly, at least 15 minutes. Okay, I'm doing the one in South Africa because I saw like the thing with Trump, and that made me go like, oh, I can understand how this is really good for you Americans because you want to look benevolent for once, because you tend to look like assholes on the world stage. But I went like, I don't really like what you're doing because people think like, oh, look, he's exposing the world to something everyone already fucking knows. I'm like, okay, this is not really that much of a flex because you get to dunk on people from the safety of the White House. And those same jackasses that you just dunked on is going to go back to South Africa and say, look what this white man in America made us fucking do. And who the fucking hell do you think they're going to take it out on? The Afrikaners. That's not a long-term strategy you did there. That's actually quite fucked up. Thanks for that. Although I can't really flame it that way, but that's the reality. So I'm gonna do that one. That should probably be released in like an hour, maybe. And then I want to do one on that Black Fatigue one. I want to do one on the Dave and Joel Berry because Dave put his foot in his mouth, or not Dave. Joel put his foot in his mouth, and I want to dunk him for that stupid shit. There's a really long thread I want to do a video on why James Lindsay is horribly wrong and his meltdown. It's really, really well written. I don't really often just read a Twitter thread, but this one was really fucking good, so I just wanted to do that. I want to take the piss out of that 150 IQ chick that Andrew had to go at, just because I feel like I debunked all of feminism in one shot in under 10 seconds because I'm good at that. What else? I think that's all I have for at the moment. So I got a fair few lengthy videos. Because something I've noticed about people, people really like when I do long form content. People don't like the short stuff as much. They like it because if I just give a basic concept, they're like, "Ooh, elaborate on this, please." And sometimes I just want to get the message out as quick as possible and have other people fill in the gaps. But then I realize, like, "Ew, we want you to tell us everything."
Well, I think it's because people honestly do think that you have something interesting to say. I certainly you're certainly entertaining. Uh,
Thank you.
the I do remember the first long form video that I saw you do was that huge response to Birdman. That
Oh
was
yeah, that was fun.
you, and I could tell
He's
you
an
had a lot of
intelligent
fun.
man.
He's not. I don't think he's a very. What did you say? You cut out.
He's not a very intelligent man.
I
like he's a talented mimic. I will give him that. Like he can mimic a leftist perspective quite well. The problem is it isn't real. Like I was watching a recent video that he did, and I did a video on it because someone said to me, "What's your take on Nerdrotic that Birdman did on?" And I watched like 5 minutes of it, and he just debunks his own argument, and to a lesser extent, his entire channel in one shot. And I went, how do you not realize what you just did? And I basically stopped watching the video because there was nothing to me that he could say after that. He just basically destroyed his entire argument. The same thing he did with the leftist perspective. Like he just parrots leftist talking points constantly, and then he gets upset when you call him a leftist. I'm like, how do you not see that your points are just the cliche what everybody else does?
It's like, I mean, maybe in his mind, being a leftist means being a communist, and he's not a communist.
Could be that. I just seem to think he's very stupid. I don't consider him a very intelligent person. Like there was
yeah, I mean, look, like I don't think there's just a good argument for leftism that's widely available to the average leftist. I think that's
no.
I think like you said,
their worldview is based on emotion.
You have mimics, like you said, who parrot the talking points, and they don't really understand how they cohere together into a worldview.
No. And you can see this with the way that he talks. Like he tries to talk, like for example, he spoke about like the diversity thing, and like he has a screen with he has an excerpt from an article, I imagine, and like the person on the article openly says, "We tried to put in diversity and it didn't work. People didn't like it." I'm like, well, that's not a conspiracy, you fucking moron. That's the people who made the fucking comic book telling you it didn't sell. Like that's not a conspiracy. Like if the people who buy your products tell you we're not interested in this, and then the people reading that and the people making the videos going like, this is the reason it doesn't sell. Like you literally have customers telling you this is why it doesn't work. And then so like, oh, like this is like far right talking points. I'm like, motherfucker, it's just the consumer feedback. Like, shut up.
Yeah, well, it's like you said, they just kind of I mean, that's just the guilt by association fallacy. Just
yes, it is.
They labeled this side the bad side, and anything they say is bad because it's the bad side saying it.
Yeah, it's a really reductionist way of looking at the world, but that's basically what his worldview is. Because I remember debunking some of the stuff that he said, and I remember just going through. I'm like, you are so indoctrinated to the point where like I feel like I'm kicking not even a human being, like I'm kicking a script down a flight of stairs. Because it's so cardboard copy of just like every cliched leftist thing. Like anyone who says global warming is real, I instantly just go like, okay, like, you're not to be taken seriously.
All right. Yeah, that's. I mean,
it's really just a deference to authority.
It is kind of a basic deference to authority, which is why monarchy has historically worked, because I think most people have had this deference to authority, and people don't generally think about the average person doesn't think about these deep philosophical issues on a regular basis, or they don't think about what politics is. They're too busy living their lives, and
historically they never had to.
Yeah, and
that's probably why they're not particularly good at it, because no one ever taught them that they need to give a shit about this. I think that's probably why democracy doesn't work. Like the idea that the average person knows anything about statecraft is fucking absurd. I mean, there's a reason why H.L. Mencken said democracy is the pathetic belief in the collective wisdom of individual ignorance.
Right.
It's true.
So, what would you say is your closing statement? Where can people find you?
Primarily on the Aristocratic Utensil channel on YouTube, and my Twitter handle is Aris_utensil, and there you'll find a lot of F-bombs and racial slurs. Primarily never at black people, which is really quite funny. If I drop the N-word, it's because some twat is pissing me off. Usually a white liberal woman. They're the ones that are most deserving of, because I'll be honest, I dropped the N-word quite a bit, and it is always an expression of annoyance.
Yeah, I mean I
It's
mean,
probably
I
why
don't
no
know
one's
if
ever
like
given me shit for it. It's like, bitch, please, like that kind of a tone.
gotcha. Okay. I it's I'm not sure if I condone saying bad language online, but you know, I'm not going to. It's a I can't really stop you if you want to do that.
I pick my moments. I mean, I've never been. There's the thing is, I've never gotten shit for, except Birdman. Birdman gave me shit for saying that, but then again, he's gonna look for fucking any reason to have a go at me. Um,
Mhm.
and to me, when somebody just says you say the N word, I'm like, can you at least give me the context of what that I said? Because I feel like if you just like typed in like look in my history of when I said that word, you would go, yeah, okay, this is fair enough. It's not really saying anything at anyone in particular. It's more just expressions of irritation. Which is
Yeah.
fair enough. Like if I see someone black dropping it and it's a moment of annoyance, I'm like, yeah, it's fair enough.
All right. Well, I'm glad that I got to talk to you today, and I hope, and I'm glad that I was able to get back into the interviewing swing of things. And thank you all for watching. If you like this video, you can like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you, and have a nice day.
Same to you.